A couple of days ago, I got a message here on YouTube saying a how to dial in guide for this sound would be great for the Marillion tone that I did for a Sunday solo last week. Let's do it. Okay, so we're in the lunar session for my Sunday solo of Lavender by Marillion that I did the other week. And as you can see, it's not a particularly complicated session. There's only a few tracks. I've basically got 2 tracks here, which are my backing track. I couldn't really find a good backing track that I wanted to use. So what I actually did is I ended up using AI to split the real song out into stems. So I've got 2 different stems here. This top one is everything other than guitar. So it's drums, bass, and the vocal. And this bottom one is the rhythm guitars that are just over on that one side. And I was really impressed with the AI and how clean it managed to separate those stems out. There is a few little artifacts, but it still did a really good job. If you want to check out the website I used and try it for yourself, I'll put links to everything that I used in the description below. So first, let me just play these 2 backing tracks so you can hear what they're doing. So this is the main backing track with the drums, bass, and vocal. So you can hear there is a few little artifacts, and you can probably hear that that lead line is being played by a synth that doubles the guitar, but it's removed most of that lead guitar quite nicely. This is the second track, which is just those rhythm guitars over on the one side. Put them together, and this is the backing track I was left with. I think it sounds really good and sounds a lot better than any of the tracks that I could find. For the guitars, there's 2 guitar parts that I needed to play. There's the first part of the solo, which then continues through the song. So the way that I did it was to play the first solo, and then I did a second take with the second solo that's just playing that same riff underneath the main solo. And the way that I've got it set up is I have the guitar coming in mono here on this track. It then gets sent to this bus, which is a stereo bus, so that I can do all those really nice lush stereo effects that I needed for this song on this bus. And I'm doing exactly the same for the second guitar and virtually the same processing on the second bus so that that can be in stereo too. The only other track I've got is down here, and it's an actual reference of the real song, just so I can A/B between the tones that I'm creating and the tones that are on the actual record, so that I can make sure that I'm getting as close as I possibly can. Okay, so that's the session. Let's check out the guitar tones. So as you can see, there's a bit of processing going on, but there's nothing really too complicated on here. I'm going to disable all these plugins and show you where we started with the guitar tone. So no big surprise here. I built this tone with Helix Native. I usually use Helix Native for all these Sunday solos. I'm just so used to it and I can work really quick in it. So it's perfect for dialing in these tones when I want to get the video out nice and quickly. This tone was actually built around one of my old presets. I did this tone a little bit different than I usually would, and didn't really do too much research about what was used in the actual recording because time was a little bit tight and just needed to get it done. So I built it around one of my old gigging presets. As you can see, this is my general preset of a BE100 from a couple of years ago. But I did change a few things up, and one of the big changes for me is that I didn't use any IRs. As you can see here, I'm using a pair of stock Helix cabs instead of IRs. And the reason for that is I tried a bunch of my usual IRs and I just couldn't really get the tone that I was after. So I tried a few of the stock cabs, and after playing around with them and trying a bunch of combinations, I settled on these 2. Let's disable some of these blocks and I'll walk you through the preset. So as I said, this is based off the BE100, which is the placator amp in the Helix. The settings on the amp are pretty stock. I think the only thing I really changed is to pull up some drive because I knew that I was going to be doing a lot more processing further on with some of the other plugins. So I just wanted to get a kind of rough tone here in Helix. That's then coming to these 2 cabs. I'm using the 412 Cartog C90 and the 412 Cali V30. And in the mixer, you can see I'm using a lot more of the V30. I basically just tried blending the 2 together until I got a tone that I was happy with. And this is what I finally settled on. So this is the tone of just the amp and the cabs, no other effects. So nothing too remarkable there. We're kind of in the ballpark of what I needed tone-wise, but I still wasn't getting the kind of distortion that I needed. So I put 2 distortion pedals in front. I use the Tima, which is the model of the Timmy, and the Heir Apparent, which is the King of Tone. With those 2 pedals in, this is the tone I had. So with those 2 pedals, I was getting a lot closer to the actual tone that I was needing. You can actually hear that there is quite a bit of string noise and things like that. I wasn't really too bothered by it. I could have gone in and chopped out all those bits of noise, but I really like the fact that it's a one take. There's not really any editing going on the actual audio itself, and it just adds to the authenticity of the tone. And once it's in the actual track, you don't hear those noises anyway. So I just left them in. Moving down, the next thing in the chain is the delay. I used the transistor tape delay, and these are the settings that I used. I'll bypass it and I'll bring it in so you can hear what it's doing. Next in the chain is the 10-band graphic EQ. I use this EQ a lot when I'm designing these tones, as I find it's really useful in shaping the tone that's coming from the speakers. You can see that I'm pulling out a lot of the higher stuff, the 2K, 4K, 8K, and doing a bump at around 500 and 1K, just to try and get the tone that's on the record of that mid push. So I'll bypass this EQ and then I'll bring it in so you can hear what it's doing. So I don't know how well that's going to come across, but it's just helping give that mid push of what was on the record. I'm not done with EQ though, we've still got some more to go, but this was getting me a good starting point. The only other thing that I'm doing in Helix is some reverb. It's just a whole reverb with the settings, as you can see. I'll bypass it and bring it in so you can hear what it's doing. So that's helping put the guitar somewhere, but I'm not done with reverb yet. There's still quite a chunk to come, as I've got a separate reverb bus with a load of reverb on it because this was quite a wet tone. But for a starting point, I was quite happy with what I was getting in Helix. Next plugin in the chain is the distressor. I do tend to do compression after Helix Native because I like to control those dynamics and get a more even tone, and that's exactly what I was using this for. But I also used it to get the level up because what I was getting out of Helix was quite quiet, and rather than going back and forth and moving my levels all around in Helix, I just thought I'd bump it up here in the distressor. So warning now, the tone does get quite a bit louder once this plugin's in. I'll bypass it and I'll show you what it's doing. So you can hear we're getting quite a jump in volume, but it's also bringing the guitar right up into our face. I really like what this plugin does. Next in the chain is the little micro shift. This is one of those proper over-the-top 80s tones, so you've got to have some pitch shifting on there, and this plugin sounds so good. You might remember me using it from the last tone breakdown I did. I've got it on setting 3 and dialed in quite a way, but as you'll see a little bit later on, this made the guitar actually too wide, and I end up narrowing it down a little later in the chain. But for now, I'll bypass and I'll show you what this sounds like. So cool. I love that 80s tone. It takes the guitar from being like this and gets it super wide. Next plugin in the chain is Pro Q3. I use Pro Q3 on everything. I think it's the most versatile EQ you can get. I will at some point update to version 4, but for now, Pro Q3 is doing what I need it to do. And as you can see here, I've got quite a curve going on. I thought it was really interesting that one of my buddies, Jake, when he saw this curve on my Instagram of this Sunday solo, mentioned what an extreme curve this was. And yeah, it is quite extreme, but it was giving me what I needed for the tone. I'm cutting out loads of this low end, which you just don't need, taking off a lot of this top end as well, everything above about 4K, and then just doing some shaping in the middle. I'll bypass and then bring it in so you can hear what it sounds like. So hopefully you can hear there that it's really helping control this tone now. and giving me a much closer tone to what's on the actual record. Next in the chain, I needed to do some more ambience. I noticed in the record that the guitar sound has quite a bit of room tone going on, so I tried a bunch of ways to get that in this tone. First, I was going to do it in Helix Native itself, but it wasn't really giving me the tone that I was after, so I tried a bunch of different plugins that I've got to do room reverb, and I finally settled on this one. This is CLA Epic, and it's a recreation of a bunch of CLA's delays and reverbs, and I've only got the room setting turned on here, everything else is bypassed. I'll turn the plugin off and then I'll bring it in and show you what it's actually doing. That is the tone that I was after. This sound like the amp is in some huge big space. This plugin did it really well. And then the last plugin in the chain is Ozone. This is an old version of Ozone, Ozone 9. I haven't updated for a while, but all I needed it to do was just to bring the width back in a little bit. After using the micro shift, the guitar had gotten too wide when I was listening back to the reference, and I just needed to pull it back into the center. So all I did was use the imager and just narrow everything back down again. I'll bypass it and I'll bring it in so you can hear what it's doing. So you can see we've still got quite a wide guitar tone, but it's just bringing things back into the center a little bit and stopping it being quite as wide as it was. So the only other thing that's on the guitar is I'm sending out to a bus, and it's this reverb bus here. And on that bus, I've got the Lexicon 480. I just wasn't getting the amount of reverb that I needed. It's a very wet tone. And I found that when I put this in and in the contents of the track, it really helped the guitar just sit really nicely. I'll bypass it and I'll bring it in so you can hear what it's doing. So you can hear now that that is a very wet guitar tone, but if I play it along with the backing track, you'll see how nicely it makes the guitar sit. So this is the guitar in the track without the reverb. And now if I bring the reverb in, it just sits so much better and sounds like what's on the record. As for this other guitar track, all it's really doing is the same as the first guitar, just playing that same riff underneath as the solo continues on the other track, and I'm doing virtually exactly the same processing as the track above. I'm using Helix Native, the distressor again, the micro shift, and the same EQ as before. I'll bypass some of these plugins and bring them in one at a time so you can hear what they're doing. Again, that guitar is sending out to the reverb bus. So I'll mute the backing track and I'll play these two guitars so you can see how they sit together. So it's quite subtle, but you can just hear that guitar continuing underneath. I imagine the way that they probably did it when it was recorded was they did that one take of just that guitar playing that same motif the whole way through the solo, and then overdubbed the other part of the solo on top. The only other things that I've got going on are on both tracks. I've got some tape saturation and Neve summing. And then on the master, I've got some more Neve summing, some more tape saturation, and the SSL bus comp, just to help glue things together a little bit, just so that solo didn't sound like it was sticking out too much and it sounded like part of the track. I'll bypass all the Neve extensions and the SSL so you can hear what it's all doing. So there you go. That's everything that I did to make the Marillion tone for Lavender for my Sunday solo. I love these kind of tones, these really over-the-top 80s tones with loads of effects on, loads of reverb, loads of ambience. I just think they sound great. So there you go, guys. That's how I made the guitar tone for Marillion's Lavender. As usual, not the most complicated of guitar tones. There is quite a bit of stuff going on, but I love these over-the-top 80s tones with all the effects, all the reverb on them. I just think they sound great. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up below. If you want to watch another video on my channel, you can do it just up here. And don't forget to subscribe. You can do it right there. I'll see you in the next one.